Well, if nothing else, the gospel clearly shows us that the relationship between politics and religion, etc., is a tricky one. They were using, Jesus' opponents were using it precisely as a way to trap him, to slip him up. I mean, you get the picture, right? Their land was wrongfully occupied by the Roman Empire, we could say that. And so the challenge was, if you say, pay the tax to Caesar, to the Roman Empire, he'll lose a lot of his disciples. Whereas if he says, don't pay the tax to Caesar, then of course he'll be in real trouble with the authorities. And there does often seem to be this irreconcilable difficulty in seeing how they should go together. Now, as the first reading and the psalm make eminently clear, and as we know very well, God is the ruler of all. God is the supreme king of everything, the creator of everything. As I say, the first reading and the psalm remind us of that. But that doesn't mean that when it comes to the relative autonomy of created things and how they work, that it's clear how our faith should respond. Now there are, of course, easy, simplistic quasi-resolutions of the problem on both sides. Historically there have been and still are today. For example, you can say, well, since God is ruler of everything, well then the church should be ruler of everything and to decide everything. Or any religion. So, for example, in our Catholic history, we had Pope Boniface VIII in 1300, who issued a very famous bull, a very famous document called Unam Sanctam, the one holy church. And basically he said, he was in dispute with a number of the secular rulers of the time, I run everything. The Pope is in charge of not only the church, but he's the supreme authority in the state as well. Sorry, no, that's ridiculous. Right? So that was wrong. It's an easy solution and sounds great for the church, but it doesn't respect reality. Now, and of course there are theocracies around the world today. You have in Islamic countries, for example, where basically religion does want to run everything directly. Of course, the other extreme is where the state wants to run everything, including religion. Theocracies can fall into that category, I suppose, too. But you have states that have complete charge, whether it was, communist Russia or historically, for example, after the 30 Years' War, the war between Christian factions in Europe in the 17th century, you had the rule at the end of it, cuius regio eos religio, whoever runs the country, it's his religion that the people have to belong to who live there. Well, that's also ridiculous. It might have seemed like a good compromise, but it's terrible. You can't impose that. One of the best documents of Vatican II, called Dignitatis Humanae, on the dignity of the human person, and we'll come back to that, said that no state can either impose a religion or prohibit a religion. So you can't oblige people to practice this or that religion, or any religion, nor can you impede them from doing it publicly as well as privately. It's a wonderful document, and it's based on Dignitatis Humanae, the dignity of the human person. So that's the key to everything when it comes to politics. That politics should further the dignity of the human person. Politics should serve the common good. So it's the common good that should be the goal of all political activity on whatever level. What does that mean? Well, it means that life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that's a good way of saying it, that people should have all they need to best befitting their human dignity to live a prosperous and dignified life. So the state needs to be able to guarantee education, housing, health care, work, be able to do all it can, and it's not easy. How do you work these things out? Do all it can to make sure that everybody equally has what they need to expand and flourish and prosper. That's the common good. and whatever level. So this principle of subsidiarity in Catholic theology, so the local government or the community can take care of what it should take care of what it can, but there are some things that you need a state government, you need a national government, and beyond, as we'll say in a minute, to assure that the common good does take place and is furthered. So, for example, infrastructure, trains and highways across the whole nation. I mean, you need more than just local communities. So there is a role for a federal government, for a larger government, to help guarantee the flourishing of the human person in all these levels. So that's what it's for. I mean, that might come as news to some politicians that that's what politics is for, the common good. So politics is not for the enrichment of politicians or the enrichment of lobbyists or anybody else taking advantage of the system. And it's not so that people who have power can stay in power or have unlimited power or indefinite power. Look across the world for dictatorships and all that kind of nonsense and the corruption. Oh, please. So if everyone could at least agree that politics is there to serve the common good, that would be a huge step forward to serve the common good. And then, of course, the common good now in our one world, and the world is coming together whether you like it or not, and you should like it, because it's fantastic and wonderful that we can now live as a global community, that technologically and economically and culturally and in all sorts of ways, we share one world. We need to take care of the planet, take care of one another, make sure that all people flourish, and not just the people of my nation or my religion or my race or my community, because we are one people. Now, we don't need revelation for this. As the declarations of human rights, for example, have made clear, these things are just pure human reason. We easily conclude that we need to help one another flourish as best we can. What faith does, however, what our faith certainly does, it makes this responsibility and this effort clearer, more urgent, and more profound. Why? Because not only do we have the dignity of the human person, which is self-evident, to use a famous word, but we know that people are our brothers and sisters, that they're children of God, that they're made in the image of God. So how much more urgent and magnificent and important is it to assure their flourishing in every way and on every level? So this is what politics are for, and what we need to assure. And it's not always clear, how this is to be done. And here's where we have, the wrestling that goes on, with politics to see what is the best way to assure these things. And so we have ability to discuss and weigh and compromise and see our way forward. So, when we have an election, it's up to you to weigh these values, weigh these norms, weigh the different candidates and their views and how the common good can best be served, and that's your responsibility. It's not my responsibility. So priests and bishops or anybody else that stands here and tells you, you absolutely must, as a faithful Catholic, vote for this person, or you absolutely must vote for that person, are way out of line. That's not our role. We might have our own opinion, but that's not our role. Our role is to remind you and remind ourselves of the fundamental values. What's at stake? What are the great principles that should guide us in our understanding and weighing of this, to make sure that everyone flourishes? And Jesus said as much. He said, in fact, we'd be judged on this. Whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me. So if we don't care for the hungry and thirsty and the marginalized and the neglected and the exploited, and what he said, do you welcome the stranger? Do you welcome the stranger? Do you take care of the sick and the lonely? So our job is to remind you. That's what homilies are for. That's what church is for, to remind you of the fundamental values. But it's your role to make the decision. It's not ours. It's part of your human dignity to take your role seriously, to conscientiously weigh up all the issues and all the values and come to a decision, which is your decision. You don't have to apologize for it to anybody or give an account to it to anybody except to God and to yourself. So, of course, you hear voices on both sides currently saying, how can you as a Catholic vote for that one? How can you as a Catholic vote for the other one? Well, sit down with one another and find out how. How did they come to their presumably responsible decision? And respect it, even if you totally disagree. And you can exchange, and maybe one of you will change the other's mind, who knows, if it's done respectfully and with presumption of goodness and presumption of conscientiousness on the part of both. But the principles are clear. How they work out in practice, in all the hustle and bustle and grime of daily life and compromise in this world, it's not clear. That's why we need politics. The values aren't enough. We need political activity to try and see how we make it real and incarnate in particular circumstances. There's not an easy answer coming from heaven, as we see in the gospel. Jesus didn't say, oh, do this, or oh, do that. He said, well, give to one what's his due, and give to the other what's its due. What does that mean? Well, it's up to you in our particular circumstances to decide what is Caesar's, what is God's, and how it works together. Jesus doesn't give you that simple answer, simplistic answer. He gives us the values, and he gives us the inspiration. Yes, we can ask for inspiration and light and guidance, as we should, but it's our decision. It's your decision. Take it seriously. My job is not to tell you who to vote for. Your job is to decide who to vote for and do it.